Genius talks, genius talks. Where everything counts, saying you the boss. Said genius talks, yeah, genius talks. Breaking up the chains, we want the freedom, y'all. I said genius talks, yeah, genius talks. Where everything counts, saying you the boss. Said genius talks, yeah, genius talks. We breaking up the chains, we want the freedom, y'all.
Yo, welcome back.
Hey.
This is Genius Talk.
Genius Talks, baby.
Yeah, man. Before we get started, please subscribe, hit the notification button.
Yeah, buddy.
Share, like, comment below. We back at it like we never left. How's everybody doing today?
I'm good. How are y'all? Bo, welcome back.
I mean, I'm here. I feel
You know you've been gone for a while.
I have been, but I'm back. And I feel
Yeah.
good. I look
Yeah, we
good.
miss you. We miss you for sure.
miss y'all more.
We miss you.
I do.
So talk to us, Bo, man. What we got today?
Yeah, we got a goodie, man. I think it's gonna be a great episode, man. Before we get to the goods, though, I want to welcome our guest, my guy to the right of me. And I know, like in our previous episodes, we said like we give roses to the people when it's almost too late or when it is too late. In fact, and I don't want to do that, man. I want, as a society, I want to be better with that and give this man his roses while you're here, brother. You've done many things, and your life is so far from over yet. And just to highlight some of the things you've done and are doing currently, man, is you're a professor right now at Pikes Peak Community College for psychology. You're the director of the Be Real Ministries as well. The treasurer of the Rocky Mountain Humanistic Counseling and Psychological Association, and you were at one point the president of the APA Division 32, which is the American Psychology Association as well, of humanistic psychology. You are author. You are an author. You are a veteran. You come from the gritty streets of Chicago, man. That's right.
And
you here.
That's
you
right.
stand
Shot
there, man. And
Okay.
it's motivation for like us. I can speak for my pod mates as well, man. To see somebody like yourself overcoming the obstacles in Chicago, man, in the city environment and making it out. You give me motivation. You give me inspiration. I get goosebumps talking about it. You know what I mean? And I appreciate that, brother, for real. So today we're talking about mental health. It's a big thing in today's society. When you say the word mental health, what do you think about initially? Just those two words.
Oh man, when I hear the word mental health, the first thing that comes to my mind is psychology and where mental health comes from. And psychology is the study of mental health and human behavior. That's
Right.
the textbook definition. But really, psychology comes from the Greek word psyche and ology, which is a logos, meaning the soul. I mean, the study of psyche meaning the soul, and ology or a logos meaning the study of. So psychology literally means the study of the soul. And I just want to just say something on that. You know, we try to make the definition politically correct, and when we do that, we don't get down to the depths of what's plaguing or what a person is pathologizing or what they're going through.
Got you. And let me backtrack a little bit. For those who don't know, this is Dr. Granger here we have with us.
Yes,
blessings,
sir.
man. Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you for having me.
Welcome to Genius Talks.
Genius Talks, baby.
Genius Talk.
My first question right now, man, being that we're in this kind of pandemic, you know what I mean, COVID stricken. I know people mental health is everywhere. You know what I mean? Being quarantined for weeks and weeks ahead, not having the financial ability to support their families. Like, what is one or just a few words of wisdom that you can give these people that are like just at loss right now to maintain their mental health moving forward?
One of the things that I think is very important is to maintain some semblance of a social connection. And during this pandemic, what I have found is that people tend to isolate, and we're social creatures. Right. We're not designed to isolate, and so as a result, dealing with maybe some online depression, what happens is people get more depressed because now they've isolated, and because of this COVID, they can't get out.
Right.
Even people who generally wouldn't go out, just the thought of not being able to go out, it adds to someone's person's depressive state or particularly anxiety.
Yeah, and it's crazy you mentioned, because you're saying that we are social creatures, right? And it's like, and I think even the previous year and during this pandemic, it really engaged us into who we are as an individual, right? And what we are about, and you know, it questions a lot of what we are and what we do.
Our purpose.
Because being by yourself for so long and not being able to connect, and I feel like that's something that has like really took a toll just in society now during this whole pandemic. Do you feel like just even as for yourself, like creating the sanity of, you know, being social, but how do you become social in a time like this?
Oh wow! There's two things I want to address in what you just said, and that's the being social or finding a way to be social, and the other is the spending time with self,
Right.
and so the social piece, engaging, you know, socially during this pandemic. There's no better time to have had a pandemic.
Right.
You know, we have social media. We have you know, connectability on every hand.
Yes.
Right.
And so, but yet it still precludes people from socializing for some reason.
Right.
You know, my just personal philosophy is, no matter how much or what we do via social media or whatever, it misses that contact, that connection, that warmth. You know, speaking of psychology, I often say, speaking of the soul, I often say that the eyes are the windows to the soul.
Yes,
Right,
sir.
yeah.
You know, and it's something about that social contact when you can meet somebody's eye and,
Yes, sir.
and see their soul. And so I would encourage people to definitely utilize the social media, but also to find out one person, somebody you can confide in, somebody you can talk to, because you know, what has happened in our political system, combined with COVID, police brutality, you know, a lot of particularly people of color, we are not only traumatized in the moment, but we have to contend with generational trauma.
Yes, sir.
And so so now we find ourselves in a very traumatic situation.
Right.
You know, I'm dealing with trauma on top of trauma.
Right.
That's a great point.
And so it could lead to quite a bit of depression.
Right.
But one thing I have found is that blacks have been able to resolve through COVID. And I don't want to dismiss the point that people have lost a lot of loved ones.
Right.
You know, so there's been a lot of grieving, but yet there's been a lot of resolve through the pandemic.
Yes, sir.
And what I have found is that people of color, because of overcoming, you know, so many obstacles,
Right.
you know, this is just one more thing,
Right.
you know, even you know, I think you know, I don't, just keeping it real, I think for the black community, I think you know, we were dealing with two major issues that upset our well-being, that upset our lives. You know, we were dealing with two major issues. We had COVID in one hand, and we had Trump in the other hand.
Right.
You know, and having to, you know, dealing with that, and for many people in the African American community, dealing with COVID was much easier
Yes, sir.
than dealing with Trump.
Right.
So we kind of we didn't let COVID really overtake us as it perhaps could have.
Yes, sir.
Right.
And speaking of, you know, mental health in the black community and, you know, just people of color, do you think that there is stigmas that are placed on black people? You know, because a lot of, you know, young black men won't seek help, or, you know, black women will take on a burden, you know, harder than they can carry. Do you think that there is a stigma because we don't reach out for help as often?
Yeah, absolutely. In 2018 and 2019, me and a couple of therapists, we got together and we formed this committee called No More Secrets, and removing the stigma. And so we did a couple workshops. We were at Pikes Peak Community College, and it was really a big it was a mental health symposium, and the focus was on just that very point, and that was trying to remove the stigma
Yes, sir.
associated with mental health. You know, that stigma is predicated on some of our behaviors as well, and that is we don't trust.
No.
And so it's easier for us to get therapy indirectly,
Yes, sir.
maybe going to the club and sitting at the bar talking to
sir.
the bartender,
Yes, sir.
Right.
or going to the barber shop,
Yes, sir.
kicking it with the boys. You indirectly get therapy that
Yes,
way.
sir.
Run some things off of grandma,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and so we don't trust the establishment.
Yes.
And so
Because a lot of establishments have,
yeah,
they have let us down in the past. So I understand that 100%. I think that there's something that it has to be said for the African American community, that we have to learn how to trust, and we have to learn how to build those relationships, because it's only going to benefit us in the end.
Absolutely. Wow.
Right, indeed. I want to jump into the fact that you said generational trauma, man. That's so imperative nowadays, man. And it's for people of all color. You know what I mean? Like white, black, Hispanic, no matter what you are. Everybody, not everybody. Some people have experienced some kind of trauma growing up in the inner city neighborhoods as we did, and like you said, like people who have experienced PTSD. People are still experiencing PTSD because of the generational trauma that they have been before COVID. What are the words of wisdom you give to them? Like, now I have PTSD. Now I have no job because of COVID. What would you say for them to kind of regulate their emotions and kind of get back on their feet? Like, you know what I mean?
Yes. Wow. I mean, that's kind of it's kind of a loaded question, and that dealing with generational trauma. I mean, we really have to understand how generational trauma really affects people of color.
Right.
You mentioned PTSD, and one thing about PTSD, and many other pathologies around depression or anxiety, for instance, bipolar, and but what happens is with that, your child can have all the symptoms of PTSD or bipolar or some other diagnoses, and they won't truly have it, but they got it from their parent.
Yeah.
It was passed down, perhaps genetically and behaviorally, and
Yes,
so
sir.
we have this nature and nurture component
Gotcha.
that
Right.
plays into that.
Got you.
And so, to encourage someone, why I say the question is loaded, because to encourage someone during the pandemic, and as far as losing everything, and then trying to encourage someone or help someone how to deal with generational trauma, there's so
It's kind of
Yes.
conflicts.
it's so
It
trying to
conflicts.
find an
Yes, sir.
intersection. Yeah.
Right.
To me, it's almost as if you have to work on the generational trauma before you can work, because your physical, like not having a job that can be fixed, not feeling okay with yourself, that
Takes
can
more
cause
work.
that can cause damage.
Right.
So getting that help for yourself and your mental health, to me, is like 100% the most important thing within that.
That's a great point. And we were talking about
Yeah.
it. Oh, we were talking about it kind of put me in a situation like, damn, like that may be me. You know what I mean? Like a realization is like during this pandemic, I'm gonna say me. I'm so asphyxiated on physical health. You know what I mean? Like working out, exercising, and going to work and after work, you know what I mean, interacting with my son and kind of like just upkeeping my physical energy and my physical health, and I kind of bypass my mental health. You know what I mean? And when you said that, I'm like, that's a great point you bring up, because we're so focused on life at hand, we kind of forget what's troubling us or has troubled us in the past. And can you elaborate more on that?
Oh wow, man. Yeah, absolutely. What happens is when you're traumatized, we tend to build layers, and so we cover the trauma up. I don't know, as a child, I don't know, maybe my imaginary friend, and I'm just, TV or social, anything, you cover it up. As we get older, we cover it up with job, and we cover it up with getting an education. We cover it up, and we cover it up, and we you even trying to play the game, trying to keep that trauma concealed. We dress it up, we cover it up, and so it's a constant thing throughout our lifespan of covering it up. And so the trauma is just so buried, and it's so big of a trauma, generational trauma, what has happened to the African American people, that's an atrocity, even for us to even survive what we had to go through.
Right.
And so you have traumas. Now, it would be something different if even the institution of slavery, if that only impacted the generations of that time.
Yes, sir.
Right.
But it continued.
But it did not. It continued.
Right.
And
it affected all races too. You know what I mean? Slavery just, like you said, it affected African Americans as well as the abolitionists and people that didn't agree with it at that time, and be still like battling that nowadays. And it's seen. It's seen in social media. It's seen in politics, and man.
Well, and to agree to both of you guys, it's just kind of one of those things where, because we dealt with the trauma way back then and it's reformed to now, it's almost like the new generations are still living through the older generational times, right? And to your knowledge, right, explain how could that affect us as generations continue to move forward, right? Like, how do we get better, or just even how do just things kind of move in a better direction? Because it almost seems like it's this continuous cycle that we're all going through, right? Like 10 years ago, we're still dealing with the same thing, right? Fast forward 10 years now, we're still dealing with the same thing. So it's almost like a whole cycle that still hasn't seemed to even stop. Wow. Or even we haven't put a dent in that, right?
We have not, man. I really appreciate you even asking that question. As much as things change, they stay the same.
Yes, sir.
And
that is systemically.
Systemically, absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. Cycles, we have to break some cycles.
Yes.
We have to just point blank break some cycles within ourselves.
Right.
Black history, the celebration of Black history or studying Black history is not so that we could know, went right, in our past, but where did we go wrong? Where did we go wrong? We could have did something different.
Right.
One of the things I just like to put out there, if we had recognized that the master, as it were pitting one slave against the other.
Yeah.
Had we, it seemed to me, if we could realize that this is what happened to us, then I think we would love more. We would hold each other up more. Right. One of the, I know we got to deviate from COVID, but one of the things that I have found so troubling is that we heard it before, the crab in a barrel syndrome. Yeah. Is as if we don't want to see each other succeed.
Right.
And that's somewhat of a sad dilemma.
Right.
We have to overcome that, because that's not us.
Right.
That's not our original way of being.
Right.
And so we gotta
that's a great point. And I always even tell myself, and even just try to preach just the younger generation, is that we are all one decision away from change.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yeah,
and what I mean by that is your decision will always reflect on what happens in the future behind the doors and in front of people, right? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And it's just like, because sometimes we can sit here and be out in front of everybody and we can show just, how great people are, right? But what are we doing behind everything that is really making the change in the communities, right?
Yes.
And I think that right there is the key to it, because of those built up traumas, because we are not one within ourselves. How can we be one for another person?
Absolutely.
So how am I going to love my brother and give you my full attention if I don't love myself? And I think that is the part where psychologists like you are key, because you can help people get to know themselves, figure out what their worth is, and get them back to loving themselves. And that's the start of it. So they can go out and they can preach that into society. And, and I feel like last year was a big start of that, because you've seen all people of all colors, of all walks of life, walking together for one purpose.
Yes.
And I feel like dealing with the trauma, you're gonna get there.
It's funny you brought up a great point as well as you did. And you was talking about it earlier. Like you said, with the whole pandemic, people are now faced to be at home alone, and that's a scary thing, because most people in this generation don't know themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So to be faced with yourselves 24/7 and not know who you are.
It's scary.
Absolutely.
It's scary.
And it can lead to, unfortunately, suicide. It can lead to
Depression,
anxiety,
anxiety.
etc. And what would you say? What would you recommend to, like, for the people that don't know themselves or are scared to know themselves because of the generational trauma they know they kind of have concealed or dormant? How would you, and what words would you say? Get on the bike, you know what I mean? Get on the bike, start pedaling, and this is the direction to go on so that you can not only know yourself, but be comfortable with yourself. Most people know themselves, but not actually comfortable with who they are.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And so they're
Absolutely.
scared to kind of like deepen that. You know what I mean? So what would you say to help those people?
Well, this is perhaps the primary area that I deal with my clients.
Indeed.
Even though they don't realize that's the area initially they may show up with some anxiety or depression, but after you talk to them for a while, you get to know them, you come to realize that self-love is what's missing. Mm-hmm. And so how do you get this person to a place of appreciating self and accepting self? Right. And Aristotle said, to know thyself is the beginning of wisdom.
Yes, sir.
And so, as young people, we lack the wisdom.
Yes.
Because
we think we know it all.
We think we know it all.
Right.
And so, at 17, at 17, I had all the answers. I knew it all. And now, many decades later, with DR in front of my name,
you're still searching.
I'm still searching.
Yes, sir.
In fact, I was depressed when I got my doctorate because I thought that
was the end.
I thought it was going to be celebratory. It's like, whoa, black man coming from the ghetto,
Yes, sir.
from the hood.
That's an accomplishment, though.
And so I
celebrate that, brother.
And but what happened was I felt let down because after all of those years of school, you realize, man, at 17, I knew it all. I was living good. I was living high on, smelling myself.
Indeed.
And then now, with DR in front of my name, it didn't show me how much I knew. It showed me how much I didn't know.
Yes, sir.
And so I'm constantly, every day is learning. That's something else too. Let me put that out there. Mm-hmm. There's this. I just had this conversation just recently. There's a saying out there that I find very disturbing. If I could, find it very, very disturbing. They say if you want to hide something from a black person, put it in the book.
Yeah.
And I find that very disturbing.
It is.
And
it's very offensive.
It's very offensive. I want to encourage, because see, this is part of the generational curse.
Yes, sir.
Part of the generation, trauma, but it is a curse, and that is that we were prohibited
to read.
And in fact, I have a poem, and it's in my book, but I do have a poem in reference to just that point where it's passed down from generation to generation. Right. If I could share it.
Yeah.
Yes. What is the name of your book, and how can people get to that?
This poem is in Stay a While. Multicultural.
Stay a while.
Poetic narratives on multiculturalism and diversity.
Make sure you guys check that out.
Where can they find that at?
You can find it on Amazon.
Yes, sir. We'll be on tonight.
Or University Professors Press.
Okay.
So it's called Stay a While.
I'm ready, brother.
And
Stay a while.
And so the poem. I was in Chicago because I'm from Chicago. I was visiting my brother in Chicago, and we were sitting down in his man cave and having a beer or two and just talking. And he was telling me about all of the crime and all of the shootings that was going on in Chicago. We were discussing, where mom is going to go. We were trying to make plans of our future. And I said to him, man, it's a shame that these kids, they hurting one another. And they know they can break down every weapon. They know the name of every drug, but they can't read.
Yes, sir.
Right.
And so we were talking, and as we were talking about it, first it was kind of lighthearted, but then it was like very deep. And we looked at each other. I said, man, that go back to slavery.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And from that, I wrote this poem called That There Book. That There Book.
With a D-A-T?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So parent walks in and catches the child reading. What you doing? Put that book down. You's gonna get us all in trouble. Who learned you how to read anyway? Miss Paulie. You tell Miss Paulie, don't she ever learn you how to read no more. You's gonna get us all in trouble. Master said, the biggest sin for a Negro is the sin of learning. Master said, a Negro ain't supposed to be learned. And Master said, a Negro supposed to be trained, just like that mare out there and like that mule out back. Master said, it's right there in the good book. You's gonna get us all in trouble. You's be better off siring the master's handmaid than to get caught reading from that there book. My daddy couldn't read. My mammy couldn't read. Eyes can't read. And eyes be damned if I allows one of mines to read from that there book. If the master don't kill you, I'll kill you myself. So help me God. You's gonna get us all in trouble. You's gonna get us all in trouble.
Man, that's deep, man. That's deep.
Where's the applause?
Yeah, we gotta throw the little action. Hey man.
Oh my goodness.
That's so impactful.
I was almost in tears.
And yeah, that's crazy. And man, just the feedback, just even how powerful that is. But you know, I want to keep back to just even like, you know, with everybody going through the COVID stuff, like the best thing that I've learned during this thing, besides understanding myself, is reading.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, knowledge is power, right? Mm-hmm. Like, when you read, it's very informative to whatever you're reading, right? And to stay intact and keep your mind trained.
Absolutely.
Is probably the greatest gift that anybody would never take from you,
Yes.
right? You know what I'm saying?
You can't take away my mind,
you know what I
baby.
mean?
That's right.
You might take away my life, but you can't take away what I got up here.
What I
You know
know.
what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
That's, you know, and that's training. And I think that's just a beautiful thing. And I just want to, just for you, like, in moments and I always go back to these black myths, right? And it's kind of going back to what Mr. Bo said, with just like, you know, what resources do the black communities have during times like this, right? Because there's always this black myth of in the black community of, I can't go nowhere for help. There is no help.
Because you're weak. It's viewed as weak.
Yeah. And you know, to for me to reach out to a therapist, to me to reach out to a counselor, that is forbidden within the black community because it is considered weak, and it doesn't make you feel as like you know, strong. So how do you feel, how do you identify and how do you help people with that type of mindset in times like that?
Oh man, yeah, you know, and that goes back to the stigma you were talking about. You know, because of structural racism, we have had to contend with the stigma of being black.
Right.
And that's been a major stigma.
Right,
you know,
right,
it has impacted our way of our whole modus operandi, our whole, you know, just being black.
Right.
And so just wearing that stigma, I don't want another label.
Right.
I don't want another stigma on top of being
sir.
black. And so this is one of the reasons why it's so difficult for people of color to get. That's one of the reasons is because they don't want another stigma.
Right.
They can't conceptualize it. They don't know what it is, but what it is you know.
Right.
That's why.
Right.
And so, so that's just a major one. And bring me back on track with knowing during this COVID, looking at oneself and dealing with oneself, how to help people deal and get to know themselves better. I have done this with more clients since the COVID than I have in my 10 years of practice as a therapist.
Right.
And what I have encouraged people to do is to flirt with yourself.
Right.
I want you to spend some time because people during this pandemic, you'd be surprised people don't look at themselves.
Right.
I know.
You know, I look. No, you didn't look at
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
yourself.
Right.
And so it's a difference when you look at yourself.
Right.
And so
Right.
I encourage my clients to look at themselves. And what I tell people, I would say, when you're looking at yourself, I want you to throw a wink at yourself.
Right.
Just throw a wink.
Right.
You know, and people find that very uncomfortable.
Right.
But I want you to just make some smiles at yourself, laugh at yourself.
Right.
You know, just interact with yourself just for a few minutes and allow yourself, give yourself permission to laugh.
Right,
And
Yes,
to and
sir.
to be silly.
Right,
You
right.
know, because we wound up too tight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, we can't laugh, we can't smile.
You got to be serious all the
We
time.
gotta be serious all the time.
and I feel like that's why I try to, you know, on the show, I just try to have a lighthearted good time because people need more laughter in their life.
Absolutely.
Like there's too much serious stuff going on for us not to be able to laugh at ourselves, laugh with others, like just have a moment of just freedom and clarity. Like I think that
Absolutely.
laughter is great.
And
Absolutely.
to jump into that, like the day and age we live in, man, is social media driven. And like social media, at least from the outside looking in, because I'm on social media, like I was talking about, I'm very private, and that's kind of a different layer for me, you know what I mean, to maybe open up in the future. But I think it kind of affects people's mental health, you know what I mean, if it's not used appropriately.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I think people get caught in the glitz and the glamour and the clout. You see what I'm saying? And they kind of forget who they are or kind of lose who they are. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And that's why I think I'm so apprehensive of jumping in that world, because I'm content with who I am. And
That's a
I don't need
good
nobody validating who I am. You know what I mean? Like I
Yes.
know I'm confident in that fact. And I would like to hear your expertise and kind of pointing people that loses themselves in social media and how it affects their mental health by doing so.
I mean, you know, that platform is so insidious in how it impacts, you know, the young mind.
Right.
You know, and I think it's going to be even more damaging as time goes on, you know, with virtual reality, because it's becoming more and more real.
Right.
And what it does, it desensitizes one to human relations, and people get lost. Their whole life is in even video games. I've seen people where their entire life.
Call of Duty,
you know,
man. They like.
Yeah, I had one guy. He hadn't showered or nothing in 3 days. Stuck.
Man,
Just stuck.
these
Yeah.
kids are eating it. These kids out here eating Hot Pockets like it's candy. I'm like, that ain't a good meal.
Man.
Just so they don't miss something.
Yeah. And so, you know, I mean, whether it's social media or you know, way back in the day, probably when the I don't know, the pager or the beeper or whatever it might be, you know, everything has its good and its bad.
Yes, sir.
Right.
And so on one hand, certainly social media has been a way to have helped us make it through this COVID. It has
Yes, sir.
really been a blessing, you know. But when you lose yourself into whether it's social media, but you know, just a few decades ago, people were losing themselves in television.
Yes, sir.
People were losing themselves in All My Children. You know,
Yes, sir.
I mean,
My mama still is.
As the world turns, you know, as the world turns, it's
Yes,
better.
sir.
Oh man. So yeah.
That's great, man. And just to slowly wrap things up, it's so important, like you said, that self-care, looking at reflection of how people are, because you don't know who you are until a situation like this, right? People think you know who you are. You know, people probably look at themselves in the mirror every day, but you don't really look at yourself, but you also really don't know who you are. And I feel like this pandemic has either brought great or the bad in people. Or both. Yes. I mean, we either both, you know, and that right there is really what is hurting people mentally, right?
Because it causes you to be with yourself all day, 24 hours a day. Some people can't be with themselves that long.
That's right.
And think about it. If you are by yourself, that's a lot to endure. You know what I mean? And if you have kids, if you have a significant other, all that stuff plays a part of it, because then you start to realize who you know, your kids are not at school, going to school all day, so you deal with them for a short period of time versus now you deal with them all day.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Or you know, you're with your significant other and you deal with them on a certain amount of hours, but now you're with them all day.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And then you got that problem of now I don't have a job, so now how do I balance all that, right? And to me, I always felt like just something that I learned during this whole pandemic is balancing yourself. Like making sure you have time for yourself, making sure you have time for your kids, making sure you have time for your significant other, make sure you have time with your family. And because that balance is what keeps you sane.
Oh, wow.
You know, and that's, to me, that's something that I took out of this whole COVID situation is that balance, because that balance really elevates your mind to be stable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's something that's just me personally that I dealt with, that I felt like has really came to me, because you start to realize how much time you invest in your job or, you know, other things around your life, that when certain stuff starts getting taken away, it's like, now
You don't
what
know
are
how
you
to
doing?
shift.
Well, it's just like family meals. Like I have family meals. I could tell you prior to that, I probably haven't had a family meal with my family.
Wow.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
And people don't. It's easy to be on the go and boom. Well, thank you for cooking dinner, and you know, hey kids, how you doing? And it's quick, but to sit down
And that's something
with you know what I mean? To sit down and have
Yes,
that
sir.
old fashioned meal together, and you're engaging in one
Asking
another.
how
You're
their day
asking
was.
how it was. You know what I mean? We don't
Absolutely.
have that
Right.
traditional stuff no more, you know?
It's a
So
fact.
everything is just fast paced, you know? Boom, gotta go. Thanks for dinner. I mean, it by myself, I'm watching TV or, you know what I mean? But to have that real sit down with yourself and your family and that support system that people probably don't have.
Or take for granted.
Or take
Yes.
for granted, right? That's the biggest thing.
And things little as that, man, affects your mental health.
It
So,
does.
You know what I mean? So
Exactly.
much in a positive light.
Right.
Like I said, as we wrap things up, I do want to applaud you, man, for
Yes,
not
sir.
only being a man of color and someone of your stature, but to remain humble. You know what I mean? And to give guidance and to help people such as myself as a man of color to want to better myself, to want to read and to want to know more than I knew yesterday. And that's motivation for me, man. And I want you to continue to motivate, you know what I mean, those like ourselves and those not, you know what I mean? And just continue to create that impact, that footprint that you're leaving in this world, because it's needed.
Yes, sir.
Especially right now, brother. So thank you, man.
Yeah, we
Yes, sir.
appreciate you,
Thank
man.
you.
And is there
Seriously.
anything, you know, that you'd like to leave with our audience? You know, if there's any type of resource centers that you would suggest to them, or, you know, just yourself, if they want to reach out to you and, you know, ask for help, is there anything that you want to leave with them?
Well, sure. First, I want to say thank you for the invite.
Yes, sir. Anytime.
And when I received the invite, I was a little hesitant at first, just by reason of the genius.
Right.
And I certainly wouldn't want to be on a show called Genius. But when I saw it with a J and a backward E, then I said, that's the kind of show.
show to be on,
That's the
brother.
kind of show I want to be on.
Yes,
So I'm
sir.
very happy
Good.
for the invite.
Indeed.
But yeah, I do want to just let you know that yes, Stay a While, Multiculturalism, Poetic Narratives on Multiculturalism and Diversity is out there on Amazon or University Professors Press, as well as actually there's a series of poetry books that spun off of that one by various authors available on University Professors Press. And also I could be reached. I do a Be Real Ministries. I do a Facebook Live every Sunday, and I'm considering bringing back Therapy Thursday that we were doing. But yeah, I can be reached at drn8 granger at gmail.com.
And let me say this too,
man.
brother.
Stop.
Let me say this one time. So I don't think I ever told you this. The first time we met at Pikes Peak Community College, I believe it was, man. Like, you was sharp as you are now. Haven't missed a beat. Am I in contention with you, brother? And I know I have to come to play. Am I in contention with you?
Dr. G, don't blow up his head. Don't do
I
it.
come to play.
When I grow up, I want to be like
I
you.
want to be like you. Indeed.
Yes,
brother.
sir. Well, thank you so
man.
much for
Hey,
coming
man, we
again.
appreciate it,
Word.
man. Mental health is a real serious thing, man.
is.
Please
If you
get
need
your
help, get
support
help.
system. Please reach out to people that you need to reach out to, man, and create that support system. If you don't have nobody, and reach out to people, friends, friends, family, and
Right,
even resource centers in your local communities,
Yes.
Yes,
and
sir.
and even church, even if that's something that you guys haven't got into. But really, please reach out to people and identify issues so that way you can work and
It'll become greater
we can
issues.
stop it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Indeed.
And then
Absolutely.
again, man, here we are. Please
Genius
subscribe,
Talks, baby. Thank you.
notify, Genius Talk.
We out, baby.
Genius Talks, where everything counts, saying you the boss. Said Genius Talks, yeah, Genius Talks. Breaking up the chains, we want the freedom, y'all. I said Genius Talks.